Welcome back to part two of our three-part conversation with Burt and Marge Norris. If you missed part one, go ahead and see it in the description down below. Get caught up and join us for part two. But in the meantime, we're going to dive right back into the conversation.
So when you were raising kids, how did you find time to balance your marriage with family and work and all the things that you had to do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something, of course, every couple goes through that when they have children. But you have to understand that certain things that you have to do, that you're required to do, but you also have to understand that there are also things that you can neglect.
Mm-hmm.
Since both of us were fully involved in the church, when I was at 31st Street, I was doing the deaconing and was in the choir and teaching Sabbath school and choir rehearsals Friday nights. And she was there pretty much with the kids going through their Sabbath school lesson. And she was teaching, in the lower division too. And so the spiritual aspect, was good. But every time I'd come, I remember coming home from choir rehearsal on Friday nights and we spent some time, with the kids. We'd be wrestling around and playing around. And a lot of times they'd be with us in the bed and they'd go to sleep. And I'd wind up having to get up and carry them to their room and put them in the bed. But we always tried to make that time. And they were always there involved with us in church, in the children's choir and things of that nature. So we tried to kind of show them, not just tell them, but kind of, show them, what it means to, to be a son and a daughter of God, to understand that this, this life that we're living, is a temporary. It may seem like a long time, but it's a whisper in time when you compare it to eternity. And so, and whenever you're going through something, you always have to judge that in this too shall pass. There is a better day coming, and that the storm is passing, but it will come daylight in. And once you have that focus, I think that long range goal, then other things, you can deal with. And when both of you have that in point of view, then that makes it a lot easier. Even though you might get upset with somebody for a while, but then when you really think about it, yeah, but that's because I, thought this way, or I thought it should happen that way, when in fact that, that might not have been the best way.
So Marge, let me ask this then, because you were working full-time as a teacher, Dr. Norris, you're a dentist. And so that's the spiritual side. What about work and school and just hobbies and other, how did you balance that part of it in?
Yeah, I'm an organizer. And so whenever I have a task to do, I make lots of lists. I always make, I make lots of lists, even though we don't have the kids in our home. They're grown up and whatnot. But I like to write down the things that I need to do. And I like to prioritize what's the most important thing I need to do. And I like to see a line drawn through something that I've done. So at the end, like sometimes you could be busy doing so much stuff, but at the end of the day, like, what did I do today? I don't know what I did today. But I like to look back and see what I've done. And that's just always been my thing. Like even when we plan trips and birthdays, this is hilarious. I pack 2 weeks ahead.
What? 2 weeks?
I pack 2 weeks ahead. And then she says, well, you always wind up repacking anything. But I write out my list of everything I want and I put it in the suitcase. And I may or may not take out a certain item. I may or may not put a certain item back in. But it just gives me a feeling of relief to know that everything is done. I cannot stand to wait to the last minute. So it's just that organizational part in me that has really helped me, and we didn't mention that I stayed home with the kids and taught them until Kyra was in 2nd grade. So that helped out a lot too, to be able to get the house cleaned, to cook dinner, because there's things that you have to do. You just can't just sit and just look lovingly at somebody all day long. So so that really helped. And of course, now that we're retired, it's a lot easier for us, although we are super busy now. And I said to my girls, I wonder if people know how old we are. It seems like we're always asked to do things and we're able to do them, and we're able to do them with joy. You know?
That's good.
So God has really blessed us in that way. And yeah, I have a friend, Marion. I'm going to mention Marion's name right here. She is like Burt. She laughs at me. She says, you already packed, girl.
You are an organizer.
But that's just that's just me. I just like to be very organized. So that's helped me. Just prioritize. Get those things done first that you know that really need to be done. Don't wait till the last minute to get them done.
Great advice. So are there any habits or anything that you do regularly as a couple to stay connected? I know you've mentioned a couple of things, but anything else that stands out in your mind?
Well, we both like to do photography, so
Yes.
that's one thing we enjoy doing.
Yes.
Photography.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
I haven't done as much now.
It's too
Except
cold right
that
now.
was one of the reasons I wanted to move to Colorado, because I grew up with the mountains, and I knew, hey man, we're close to a whole bunch of national parks, and I can do my photography. But I've been so involved in the church. When I get in my car now, it says 24 minutes to work, because I've been almost every day I'm going down to the church, because we've installed the video system and trying to get that on, and putting all these things in. But we always have the balance, when we come home and we can discuss things and talk about things and reflect. I think that's one important part of reflecting on what you've done, or in this past day. And when I see Marge doing her Sabbath school, because she has this a YouTube channel through our church, and she makes all these programs for the kids, and the research that she has to go through. She has to go through all these videos to make sure everything's appropriate, and then put it together.
I've seen some of those videos.
Nice.
Yeah. And she does that, and not knowing whose life that's affecting. And that's the thing. When we're walking this earth, we have to understand that we're having an influence one way or the other on somebody, even though we may not even know it. And many times I've read that quote, when you get to heaven and individuals say, well, you did so and so, or you did, and we wondering, well, what, just like Jesus, when did I do those things to for you or to you? And so in our retirement now, I think we're getting more of that reflective frame of mind, where we understand how things work on this planet. And the only thing you're going to take out, this house, these cars, none of that's going with. See, the only thing you can take out is, those kids that the God gave you. You make sure that's straight. The people that you've come in contact with, you want to see them there. Because what good is it, to live this life, and then in the end, okay, that's it. You almost made it. We don't want to hear that. We want to hear that, well done, thou good and faithful servant. So try to gauge everything in that light. Even though it's something might seem tedious, why am I doing this little act, or why am I doing that? But we also have to understand that God is doing a work within us. He's preparing us, and that work of preparation does not end until He comes again. So when you're looking at things from that perspective, you can put a lot of things, even the tragedies and the things that happen in your life, and you have that trust that God is still going to work that out for good. It's still going to work out in the end.
Okay.
Another thing that we like to do, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say this, we like to listen to radio classics.
Oh.
Those
Like the stories.
Stories.
Oh,
Radio.
Yeah, from the 40s.
wow, that's so
Before
cool.
we were born, like to listen to like Red Skelton, Armis, what's that
That
guy?
is so cute.
Johnny Dollar.
Johnny Dollar. Listen to that. And so, Burt has a program going on his radio when we're in the car, it's not Sabbath. That is what we're listening to. We're going to the store, we're listening to Johnny Dollar or Red Skelton. and just cracking up over these old jokes. You know, and there was a joke that was, I'm not gonna even say it, but Burt and I just thought it was so funny. We just laughed and laughed, and I said it to Kyra, and she was like,
Your daughter didn't get it.
Right.
but yeah, we love doing that. And when we drove from North Dakota all the way here, we just listened to all those old stories and
Wow.
comedies from yesteryear over. And then another thing besides the photography, this, you know, Burt has taught me how to use the video machine. Video
Okay.
And so that was in San Diego. And so I've been working with him. He's in charge of the camera crew at our church. And I'm part of that. And I love it. I love it.
Wow.
You know, I get to ask him like questions, like technical questions about the equipment or whatever. And like he's being really modest when he says we're putting in a new system. He means he's putting in a new system.
Okay.
You know, there's 2 attics. He's had to go all the way up the attics. He told me, he said he took the ladder to get up to one attic, then he had to pull that up to get to the other ladder.
Oh, wow.
And he's like under the rostrum. He was like, good thing I'm skinny. You know, he said, because I'm like there. The crawl space is really small. And I said, oh, we're down to my Sabbath.
Oh, wow.
But photography and videography and those listening to those stories and just laughing and reminiscing about old things, you know, those are some of the things that we really enjoy doing together.
That's great.
Really
That's great.
special.
That's great. Now, I want to just journey through some of the mountains and the valleys of your relationship, because of course, everything isn't always perfect. And I want to know, has there ever been a time where you thought that you weren't going to make it?
No.
Wow.
That thought, you know, never really, you know, came into my mind, or I'm sure, or hers either. It's, you know, you have to understand, you know, when you take the vows, and even before you take the vow, that's one reason, you know, we dated, we went together for a few years before we got married. And that's the time, you know, from my perspective, when you're making decisions, you're seeing, you know, how individuals respond in certain situations. You know, you give it time enough where you have an understanding of that individual, and that's when you make the decision. And you should get to the point, you know, the being unequally yoked and all this kind of stuff. See, I went to the Bible, into the scriptures, and, you know, I read and I understood, and she did the same. And so we could come together, you know, on that premise. And when you do that, I think you can weed out or forestall a lot of these other things coming into play. And they only come into play because you think your situation is worse than it could be. Or you're looking at somebody else and you're thinking, well, wow, they seem to be so, you know, boy, why can't I be the same way?
Oh, wow.
You're not there at home when he's beating her down, or you know, or whatever, you know, what's going on in that household. So the aspect of always looking at someone else. See, our families were nowhere near us when we were married. See, hers was back in Philadelphia. My family was in Denver. You know, we're in California. So we didn't have the in-laws or the relatives or whatever. And plus we didn't have, well, she didn't have, you know, sometimes women have friends that
Careful,
they care a lot. But see, and sometimes, you know, somebody else, you know, talking to you can throw you off base, you know, or sharing a lot of things with individuals, you know, is not that good, you know, to do. And so we didn't have those influences, and that I think helped a lot, because we had to grow together then. See, we couldn't run, oh, Mom, what do you think about this? Or, you know, so-and-so, what do you think about that? It was no, you figure that out. You work that thing out yourself, because that's, you know, you're the couple now. See, it's not somebody else and you, but it's just you. See, and once we came to that, we we saw that understanding, then we were just able to deal with anything.
Yeah.
So
I
he's
love
not
that.
saying that there weren't disagreements at all.
No,
Not
yeah.
saying that at all. But in my family, everybody stayed together. No matter what you went through, you just stayed together. So I never ever considered divorce or separation, because that was what I saw in my family. They always worked things out.
Mm.
Wow. So having that model.
Yeah, we never got to the point where we said, I'm leaving. I need some time. I need some space. No, we never thought about that.
Mm.
Because I grew up in a household where my dad was not a member of the church. And my dad wasn't home a lot of the times. I remember when I was 8 or 9, my mom would take me down this area in Denver called the 5 Points. And my dad would be up in one of the bars drinking. And she said, go up and get your dad. To come home. And sometimes with my parents, there were some rocky times. There was some fisticuffs, So I could see it from that point of view. What not to, what you don't want to have. Many times I was afraid, because mom was
she was tough.
Yeah, she'd go to the kitchen and pull out the knife. It's like, she grew up in St. Louis, so she came out of the area where, you got the Dukes out. So anyway, seeing that and then knowing, okay, what I don't want, I don't want that kind of replay, in my home. So
yeah,
that's good. And just a quick follow-up to something you said about, finding if you're unequally yoked and things when you're dating. What about, do you have anything to say for those who are already in the situation where they are married, maybe one has grown apart spiritually, or they just never were equally yoked, and now it becomes important to one and not the other? Is there any advice you can give to somebody who's in that kind of situation?
Yeah, it's, I was listening to the reels and when you were talking about, coming together and praying, that's so important, because if one individual is not inclined to do that, then it falls on the other individual, as the advice that Paul gave. Hey, if there's a problem still in the marriage, but if that individual is willing to stay with you, then your influence might one day bring that individual to that point in time. And of course, then you have to subjugate all your desires, and what you want in the marriage, because this is not working out. And sometimes it might come to a point that there may have to be some separation. And divorce, of course, I think it should be the last resort. But if there's something physical involved, then
get out.
Lord wants you to stay, till death. Boom, do we part?
No.
Type situation, no. But I think he understands that. But once you're in a situation, it's difficult, to kind of negotiate your pathway in that. But God has always promised that He will never leave you nor forsake you. I think when you're totally, devoted, have totally given your all to God, then He's going to work out the pathway for you. It might take some time, but you also have to understand that, sometimes you need that pathway to go through for your own spiritual development. The statement is, when we get to heaven, we're going to look back and say, yeah, Lord, you worked it out right. That was the pathway that I needed to go. But when you're walking that pathway, you're not thinking that thing.
Yes.
I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and I'm fearing evil. But we have to understand, but that too is going to, and then when you reflect back on that in eternity, what is that really going to mean? Those things, those problems that you thought were so huge or so big, it's going to seem like nothing, compared to eternity. So with that in mind, I think couples have to come to that understanding. They have to be in line with what God wants them to do first.
Yeah.
And once they commit to that, then they can allow God to work out everything.
That's good.
Yeah.
And they may need to seek professional counseling.
Oh, yeah.
Never, think that because you're a
Praying
praying
that-
person that you don't need counsel. Even when premarital counseling is really good too. Elder Eric Ward gave us our premarital counseling. But there's some things that counselors can bring out that you may not have even thought of. So God, they're ordained too, so I would have a Christian counselor if you can't work through things. You may feel that you can't pray with your partner when you're going through a conflict or a rough time. Pray individually. If that person's praying and you're praying, it's the same Holy Spirit that's going to speak to your spouse that is going to speak to you. It's not going to be any confusion because the Holy Spirit is committed. He wants you to come together and to have a good relationship. So he's not going to be telling one person, oh, get rid of him or, get rid of her. He's going to give you the right counsel if you're both seeking. And when you do come in prayer, don't beat your partner up in the prayer.
Yeah, that's great.
Lord, please help him not to do so and so, and help her not to be such a nag. Because that makes it worse.
Oh yeah.
And people, I don't know why people do that, but don't do that. If you feel like, and there's another thing, and maybe we'll get into it a little bit too, is don't criticize your partner in front of people.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
It's huge.
I cringe when I hear that, when I hear young couples criticizing their partners.
Yeah.
And don't put your business on Facebook. Please don't do
yes.
that.
Please.
You got your business out there. And then if you come together and you make up, everybody still knows what he or she did. They're like, girl, don't you get back with him.
Wow.
Keep your business your business. You have to have a circle around one another, and you have to know, no, nobody's coming inside this circle but us.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
God, just you and God working that out, as a pair.
We hope you enjoyed part 2 of this 3-part conversation with the Norrises. But not only do they have everything that they've already given us, but they have even better advice to give in part 3. So come back and join us again on Friday. See you soon.